Hello everybody, Raspberry Barrel here, back at it again, and we're back today to finish up the biography of Selene the Expander by Mewni Historian on DeviantArt. And thank you all for your patience during this wait and just between all the waiting between my videos. I am going through some personal things right now, but I hope to get back and be doing some more videos more often. And once we get to 1K, thank you all so much for subscribing. I plan to be opening up more slots and room for ideas if you guys have any more things that you would be interested in for us to feature on the channel. So once again, thank you all so much, and I hope you guys are enjoying my videos, and just thank you for being here. And without further ado, let's begin. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any noises in the background. In the beginning of Thurk in 933 BS, Selene and her family traveled to Thamor to bury her grandmother Mo under her tower. Selene and her family mourned for days, living in the tower and off in the kept garden. But on the day before they were going to bury Mo, Selene saw an unexpected visitor with her son Dipper, her sister Hecate. It had been 8 years since she left, and Selene came to tears and hugged her sister, who hugged her back. Hecate gave no answer to where she had been or what she was doing, but she greeted Selene and Corvus's sons, 7 in total. But Dipper was the only one she'd seen before she left years ago. But once Mo was buried, Hecate disappeared again, despite Selene's attempts to get her to stay. Selene would focus on raising her sons, her kingdom, but she also had a seat on the Magic High Commission. During 931 BS, in the spring, a set of demon twins, John and Jack, were causing destruction throughout the dimensions. Only the MHC wasn't sure which demon was causing the destruction. When they traveled to Mewni and caused trouble in the Johansen Kingdom, Selene used a powerful dance, Chronos Temperstus, Time Typhoon, an experimental dance that froze time. One of the few queens who dared mess with it other than Skywyn. And better safe than sorry, both the demons were crystallized, and Romulus used them as jewelry on his chest. The next year, 930 BS, was rough for Selene, as on Squartuck 73rd, her son Dipper burst through the castle doors, clothes in tatters, and had black scars on his left arm. The same kind of scar her sister Hecate had after she got revenge, dark scars from powerful dark magic. After Selene made sure Dipper was fine, she asked him what had happened, and it wasn't a happy story. Dipper was out exploring the small woods on the outskirts of the lowlands, and when Dipper went farther in, he encountered a Banschnager, a large creature that can slaughter a dozen men with ease. When she asked him how he survived and how he got the scar, he explained Hecate gave him an enchanted piece of parchment that would activate the spell when spoke, and only to use it in emergency. And this was definitely classified as one. The spell completely destroyed the Banschnager and part of the woods as he messed up the spell, as he had no prior training in magic, and was left with a dark scar on the middle of his left arm. While long sleeves would work best, Selene and Azulon allowed Dipper to get a tattoo on his arm to cover the scar. He chose blue butterflies and had one put in his other arm as well, but no one outside the immediate family knew the reason behind the tattoos. Her son Dipper developed reservations about magic, but the night before his 14th birthday, Selene had a talk with her son and reassured his confidence in magic and as a future ruler. The next morning, Selene handed the wand to her son, almost stabbed as it turned into a spear, and the spell book as well. After a few months, Selene sent Baby to evaluate Dipper, who reported he was pretty skilled. Not as much as her, but pretty skilled. It was on trip to the Firefly Kingdom that she revealed her son Dipper's fascination with the ocean and ships, and the stars above as well. He began drawing shapes out of them. When he told his parents about his desire to sail, and Selene and Azulon talked it over and agreed that Dipper could spend more years sailing and exploring the ocean, but he would need experience with a ship. Sadly, later that year in 928 BS, on Oag 15th, her father Pines passed away. having complained about his stomach the few days before. This death was a critical blow to Selene, and sadly her sister Hecate didn't resurface, which really made Selene and her brother Corvus upset. But Selene had the support of her sons, and so did Corvus. Plus, they both had their respective spouses. Selene got sick a couple months later and was scared she might be pregnant, but luckily it was just some undercooked cow sheep. Selene talking to Dipper about magic before his birthday. Selene put her son Dipper under the tutorship of Captain Njord Johansson, grandson of former King Odin Johansson, the son of her cousin King Brulo, a Vanzondum dragonfly, heir of the Dragonfly Kingdom, and one of the closest friends of Dipper, was also under his tutorship. On her son Leo's 13th birthday in 927 BS, he was able to persuade both her and Azulon to let him accompany Dipper on his future voyage, but their other sons would be too young when Dipper planned to leave, and shut down any mention of it from them. 2 years later in 925 BS, on Dipper's birthday, his 18th, Dipper and his brother Leo, along with Vanzandum, and the only and first princess of the Denial family, Cleo Denial, who had just finished studying at the Dragonfly Academy, sailed off in the large ship named the Starfish. Selene cried as she saw her 2 sons sail away, but knew her sons and the others would be fine, but that didn't stop her from terribly missing them. While the ship wasn't much bigger than the ones she took while exploring, but the crew wasn't as large, nor carried extra passengers, allowing for more supplies, thus a longer journey. It would be some time before Selene saw Dipper again, and at the end of Grievance, right before Dipper's 19th birthday, he returned with news of a new continent, and Selene's mind filled with ideas of colonization. Selene embraced her sons. Both had grown facial hair and immediately began work on plans of colonization. Her nephew, Avzandum, wanted to move his kingdom in the future there when he inherited it, and while Brulo wasn't too keen on it, Selene was excited about it. For the next couple of years, Selene would head up the colonization process, while her sons went off voyaging, discovered several small islands. The discovery of a new land reignited a passion Selene hadn't had in years. How different this land was from Luciolus and Farfallinia. Interesting how the mountains goes down the middle, how the west there was a large amount of fertile lands, while the east was mostly desert. By 922 BS, citizens from the Dragonfly Kingdom began moving towards the new continent, Libellion, meaning division, referring to the division of lands by the mountains. Selene was proud of her son's accomplishments too. He learned how to chart stars, made travel shorter, particularly with sailing. He also created constellations, pictures made from the stars. There would be so many of these made throughout history, but the big ones were the Aroli signs, special constellations that appeared about a month each year, with the last 2 only forming for a week and a day, though it would be a few years before this was completed. For her mother's 100th birthday, a couple years later in 919 BS, Selene took her to the Libellion, taking a shorter route via a new harbor on the mountains at the edge of the Forest of Certain Death. To get there, one has to pass through the forest, but the voyage time was shorter. Her mother was amazed by the progress and was so proud of her from what she'd done for humanity. The next year in 918 BS, after Dipper returned from another voyage, which included his 4 brothers, it was her youngest son's planet's first, and Selene decided she would finally pass the throne to Dipper on his 25th birthday. While Dipper would have been king, out of respect for the matrilineal line, he took on the queen title, which made her mother Alexandra happy. Selene used magic to make fireworks for the occasion. But only a couple of weeks after being coronated, Dipper insisted on taking another voyage with his brothers and sailed off before the snowfall. With no sons around and was officially not the queen, Selene looked back on her children. The one thing she wanted to change was her sister Hecate, how she should have never pushed her away when they were little, and should have held on closer before her disappearance after her fiancé's death. But this, somewhat peace, wouldn't last long, however. 3 Generations of Butterflies, Stargazing, 919 BS. The castle was under attack in the last weeks of 918 BS by a woman who used magic, dark magic, and easily took out the guards. One little skins she saw was pale and her eyes were blue, and her black hair moved like tentacles. Selene and Azulon combined their magic but couldn't beat her. Not even her mother stood a chance. The 3 of them were locked away in the dungeons, restrained with chains that negated their magic. The woman used dark magic to force people to follow her and had taken over the kingdom. This woman, who would become known as the Mother of Dark Magic, and Selene feared it might have been her sister Hecate, but early morning on Squag 6, the door to the cell opened and it was none other than her son Dipper, and surprisingly her sister Hecate. Hecate used her dark magic to free Selene and their mother, and Selene and Azulon wanted to leave and go and get reinforcements. But Hecate told them not to. She said by the time they got them, the Dark Woman would have noticed their absence and would bolster defenses. Dipper implored them to fight, but Selene was afraid that they would be defeated, even with Hecate and Dipper's help, regardless of the element of surprise. But then Princess Cleo Denial stepped in, who Selene heard was one of the most powerful mages of her and Dipper's generations. This gave Selene hope, and with that she convinced Azulon that they would fight, and what happened next was the most extreme battle in several decades. While preparing for battle, Selene accused Hecate of what happened, but she swore she never taught her dark magic to anyone, but a journal of her spells was stolen years ago. Hecate felt bad about it, and that's why she went to go get Dipper, opening a portal to bring him here to fight for their family's kingdom. They were able to get the drop of the woman, but it was still a hard fight. Hecate and Selene were offensive, blasting black and white spells at her, who managed to match and blast back. Azulon used his magic to shield everyone, but it was depleted him of all of his magic. But before she could attack, she was bound by green energy snakes created by Cleo, who sent electricity through them. But she still broke free and transformed into a large and shadowy version of herself and sent energy waves that incapacitated everyone in the room, and was about to unleash her final attack, but Dipper then dipped deep down and resisted her magic and transformed. Dipper dodged her shadow tentacles and flew high into the room and twirled the spear wand so fast the glowing tip looked like it was a circle, and he shouted his spell, Cosmic Cataclysm, and launched it so fast at the shadow monster it looked like a shooting star. When it hit the woman's monstrous form, there was a flash of light and the roof blew up, and even those past the musty mountains saw the light. In the end, the Mother of Dark Magic wasn't destroyed, but she was wounded enough they neutralized her magic, and Dipper decided her fate, while Selene and her mother wanted her executed, but Dipper instead turned her over to the MHC to be crystallized. While her son was big and physically and magically strong, he was kind-hearted, and since she didn't actually kill anyone, she was sentenced to eternity crystallized, but she swore she would return someday. Afterwards, Selene feared Hecate would leave again, but didn't. Instead, she moved into her old room, and while Selene was happy to have her sister in her life, and their brother Corvus was happy to see her too, Hecate ended up in a deep depression because she felt responsible for what happened. She might not have given that woman the book, but she let it get stolen, and she had disciples who got away and fell into a deep depression. On Torax 25th, in 916 BS, just after her 57th birthday, Hecate was found dead on the floor of her room. Dead by an apple, she cursed herself. This had a devastating effect on their mother, and Selene feared she would lose her, and she knew her son Dipper and Cleo were thinking of marriage, and pushed them towards it, announcing their engagement in 915 and marrying in 914 BS. And at the ceremony, Selene saw her mother smile for the first time in almost 3 years. Selene and Hecate fighting together in 918 BS. While Selene was messed up from her sister's death years ago, she focused on her kids to divert her sadness. All 4 of her other sons became sailors like Dipper. Her youngest planet went on to be a famous sailor for having detailed charts of the ocean. On 910 BS, Dipper and Deimos discovered a mermanoid species called waterfolk. and the two actually forged great relationships with them, starting the long and pleasant friendship between the two species. Her son Leo faced the creatures of Beast Island north of Libellion, one of the many reasons he was the Fearless. But Phobos, he was troubled. He was always a rebel, but took it too far when he and the others became seafaring thieves, becoming the first pirates. With a heave heart, Dipper banished them all from the 10 kingdoms. These pirates settled on the island northeast of the Farfallians, becoming the first ancestors of pie, cookie, and cake folks, thieving and scamming scoundrels, particularly the pie folk, and the leaders being Phobos descendants. In 905 BS, Selene said hello to her first grandchild, Hemra, Dipper's daughter and future queen. Sadly, the next year her mother Alexandra passed away before Dipper's second daughter, Orbita, was born early in 903 BS, and a few years later, in 898 BS, Dipper named his son Alexander, named in honor of Alexandra. Her other sons had children as well. Her son Leo had a boy named Stephen, Deimos a daughter named Azula, and Planet was expecting a boy he was naming Selene. In 893 BS, a large series of islands were discovered by her son Planet. While it was a journey, the islands were close together. The archipelago, which would be called the Robin Archipelago after that royal family moved there. She would attend the wand passing of her granddaughter Hemra in 891 BS, it turning into a magnifying glass, and the following year Hemra stole a boat and traveled west of the seas past Luciolus, discovering a new continent not far. Though the land she discovered was full of new monsters, making people scared to explore these lands, which Hemra laughed at. Selene adored her grandchildren, but laughed at how Hemra was more like her mother than her father, not just in looks, and was a bit like her when she led expeditions into lands that others were scared to explore. In 882 BS, she attended the coronation of her granddaughter Hemra, who became the 5th Queen of Mewni. Selene also lived to see the wedding of Hemra and Jab and the birth of their daughter Nebula in 871 BS, but she passed away the next year, 870 BS, on Zamarinor 12th. Both her and Azulon on the same night. The two were buried next to each other in Butterfly Crypt, both at the age of 108. She was the 3rd Mewni queen, first princess of the Butterfly line, mother of the first male queen, and expanded the borders of the Mewni kingdoms to the other continents. So ends the life of Selene the Expander. Selene's only 2 existing pages from her original journals. Translations. It has been my experience to never, under any circumstances, to ever eat this plant. It's highly toxic, melting the insides of the poor cows who ate it. This plant is even more toxic. It causes a slow and agonizing death that somehow not even magic can cure. Even touching it makes you feel like you're on fire. Inferno Shade. Satar. These monsters are kind of fascinating, appearing to have the torso of a human and the legs of a goat, plus eyes and horns. They can be very hairy. They are low risk for attacks, basically none. They usually indulge themselves in their drink made from grapes that makes them, well, kind of stupid. And that was the biography of Selene the Expander, part 4 and the final part of Selene the Expander's story. And thank you so much. This story belongs to Mewni Historian, and thank you, Mewni Historian, for allowing us to read it. Such a wonderful tale. I hope you all enjoyed and will be ready for the next Queen of Mewni that we'll be reading. Going back now, switching to some of the other creators who we need to get back to. Thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone!